Good morning. So I am back for the second part of our reading of the story of Joseph. We're going to go ahead and get started in chapter 40. And I hope that you guys are able to go ahead and read along with me. If not, I hope you stay and listen to the reading. So here we go. We're at chapter 40 in Genesis, which is the continuing of the story of Joseph. And I'm going to go ahead and get started with the cupbearer and the baker. So sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended to them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials, who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to Elohim? Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, "In my dream I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and squeezed them into the cup and put the cup in his hand." "This is what it means," Joseph said to him. "The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position. And you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention to me Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in this dungeon." When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, "I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread, and in the top baskets were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh. But the birds were eating them out of the basket of my head." And Joseph replied, "This is what it means. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh." Now the third day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all of his officials. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot. Now, when 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile, and when out of the river there came up 7 cows, sleek and flat, and they grazed among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up out of the Nile and stood beside those on the river bank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up 7 sleek, fat cows, and then Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep again and had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads, of grains swallowed up the 7 healthy full heads. Then Pharaoh woke up. It had been a dream. In the morning his mind was troubled, so he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh had told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh was once angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream that same night, and each dream had meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled." So Pharaoh sent for Joseph. He was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. I cannot do it. Joseph replied to Pharaoh, "But God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "In my dream I was standing on the bank of the Nile. When out of the river there came up 7 cows, fat and sleek, and they grazed among the reeds. After them other cows came up, 7 cows that were scrawny and very ugly and lean. I had never seen such ugly cows in all the land of Egypt. The lean, ugly cows ate up the 7 fat cows that came up first. But even after they ate them, no one could tell what they had done. They just looked ugly as before, and then I woke up. In my dream, I saw 7 heads of grain, full and good, growing on a single stalk. After them 7 other heads sprouted, withered and thin, and scorched by the east wind. Then the thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 good heads. I told this to the magicians, but none of them could explain it to me." Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came up after are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow them. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered, because the famine that follows it will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is so that matter has been firmly decided by Elohim, and Elohim will do it soon. Now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man to put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take 1/5 of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming up and store them up under the authority of Pharaoh, to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country, to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine." The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all of his officials, so Pharaoh asked him, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the spirit of Elohim?" And then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since Elohim has made this all known to you, there is no one discerning and as wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." So now Joseph is in charge of Egypt. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and people shouted before him, "Make way." Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, but without your word no one will lift hand or foot in all Egypt." Pharaoh gave Joseph a new name, and gave him a daughter of the priest of On to be his wife, and Joseph went throughout the land of Egypt. And Joseph was 30 years old whenever he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance of the land produced plentiful. Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored it in the cities. In each city he put the food grown in the fields surrounding it. Now Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. Before the years of famine, 2 sons were born to Joseph by his daughter, by his wife, who was the daughter of the priest of On. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh and said, "It is because Yahuwah has made me forget all my trouble in all my father's household." The second son he named Ephraim and said, "It is because Yahuwah has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." The 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had said. There was famine in all the other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt there was food. And when all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then Pharaoh told the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph and do what he tells you." When the famine had spread all over the country, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt. And all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe everywhere. So that's where we're going to stop today. We'll pick back up in chapter 42. But, I mean, like I said, this is just such an incredible story. So we have to remember where it started. He had a dream that because of Yahuwah's Holy Spirit, or his Ruach, he was able to interpret. And it was his family bowing down to him. And it made his brothers hate him even more than they already did. So they sold him because they plotted to kill him, but then decided to sell him. And then he comes into Egypt, ends up being Potiphar's servant. And then he gets kicked out of there after he gets lied on by his wife. But while he was there, he was over everything in Potiphar's house. And then he goes to prison. Yahuwah is with him in prison. He ends up being over the entire prison. Then he goes to Pharaoh and interprets this dream. He ends up being over the entire land of Egypt. The only one that was over him was Pharaoh himself. So obviously we can see that Yahuwah was with Joseph, and that everything that he does, Yahuwah made prosper. So this is just a really cool story, and we're going to get more into it. But it's just so inspiring, because you never know. Like, even if you feel like you're suffering so badly, you don't know what Yahuwah has in store for you, why you're doing the things you're doing, or in the spot that you're in. But never give up faith, and just know the reason that you're there is because that's where you're supposed to be. So never lose sight of that. Never lose sight of the fact that nothing is a coincidence. And if you have faith in Yahuwah, I mean, he can make anything happen. Joseph never lost his faith, and look where he ended up. So we're going to continue tomorrow morning. We'll start in chapter 42. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Praise to the Most High, and I hope you have a good day.